I had a hobby too. Mine happened to be guns and ballistics, and I studied guns and ballistics as much as I could, and I wrote an article about high velocity.
So out of all my years working at Weatherby, the last 5 have been some of the most exciting. Working with Adam, with him running the company.
And to think that I get the opportunity of carrying on my grandfather's legacy 75 years later here in Sheridan, Wyoming, I mean, it really is a dream come true.
Oh, I'm home. Thank God I'm home.
On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast.
All right, here we are. We're at episode 1 of the On Our Mark podcast, which we would also call the Weatherby Podcast. A lot of this has to do with Adam. You've been on a lot of podcasts, and as our brand, we're talking about real genuine people. And luckily, we've got Ed Weatherby here as well. First time you've been to the building since it's been
Operational.
Finished. Yeah, sure.
Saw it along the way in all sorts of stages, but it's nice to see people in it and furniture and guns.
Yeah, products being shipped.
Stuff being made. That's what we want.
Yeah, so we've got Adam Weatherby, Ed Weatherby, myself, Kevin Wilkerson, and Luke here at Weatherby as well, both employees.
Yep.
And love Sheridan, Wyoming so far. Like I said, episode 1. So we're kind of nervous about it, but we think it's going to go well. We're really excited that Ed's here right now. And so we wanted to get Ed and Adam on the podcast for episode 1, which we think is crucial in talking about the people behind the brand and the family, the third generation as of right now.
Second and third.
Second and third, but currently here in Sheridan, Wyoming. And it's just really exciting. And we wanted to get both of you on this podcast to start this thing off, to show people what we're about here at Weatherby. So we're excited about it.
Well, I'm excited about the podcast. I think Kevin, Luke, I mean, it's, like I said, been on a lot of podcasts, but it'll be cool to actually have one hosted here. And
Yeah.
if you're listening or just on, you don't know Kevin Wilkerson, he's
Shout out.
a great storyteller, and just I think he's going to do an awesome job hosting this. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this thing goes.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we want to definitely have our own style and be a little silly, be a little goofy, because that's who we are, especially in the backcountry, in the field, and then also in the office. We have a great time. And you guys set a great culture here at Weatherby to allow that, and also to be creative and to come up with new ideas. So it's really exciting. But, you know, one of the things that we wanted to do, especially with having you both here, is to talk about some history, to talk about where it started, where it was, kind of start at the ground level. We're here every day, and we kind of get to be with Adam every day. We don't get to be with you every day, Ed, but we're kind of in on it every day. And there's a lot of questions. You know, we fielded some questions on social media, and we said, what are some questions you'd like to ask? And we also just have some of our own questions, especially since we don't get to hang out with Ed too much. So, you know, some of those things, I would just say, Ed, I'd like to ask a couple questions right off the bat.
Let's go into those.
Let's hit some questions.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
What, you know, when we talk about, you know, I think generally at shows and on social media and all these places, and you guys have heard this your whole life, and we're just now for the first year hearing it, but like, I knew Roy. I met Roy. My dad's dad had a gun that Roy made custom. You know, like there's always these awesome stories and rich history around where it started. And, you know, within that, what was it like to grow up around Roy, you know, especially around Weatherby?
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, when I think about it, going way back and thinking of that, and then thinking about today, to me, he seems like he was ahead of his time with social media, because that is really what his, besides being able to come up with some great ideas with gun and design guns, but he socially, everybody loved him. He was involved in about every kind of organization you can think of, and just was with people all the time. He loved going to the NRA shows and just shaking hands with people and talking about how he got started, and talk about, you know, the new design of some gun coming up. And so, you know, he was a bigger than life kind of a person. And so growing up as a son with that, it was challenging at times, but rewarding, and maybe footsteps that were pretty big to follow.
No doubt.
And we each had our own style, and as a father and son, you know, with me growing up, you know, that was one thing. But then coming into the business and having a different style, you know, we we got along and had good times together, but we had a lot of conflict going along the way too, with different ideas. And of course, when I first started in the business, I knew a whole lot more than he did, and I couldn't understand why he didn't want to do it my way.
What are you say those things? What are some things that you brought to the idea table?
Yeah,
that maybe he wasn't a huge fan of.
The first thing that comes to mind, and this was the early '80s, I want to say, nobody from mainstream manufacturing was using synthetics and fiberglass. You could only get them on a custom basis, like from Macmillan back in those days. And so I thought we ought to have a synthetic gun. And in fact, we went to Macmillan, and I kind of under the table had them build up a sample. And
without Roy knowing,
without my dad knowing, and got it to a development stage where it, had the Mark V Monte Carlo, and looked as good as a black gun could look in the '80s, and he just hated it, and he said, "There's no way anybody's ever going to buy a Weatherby that looks like that." And so, I mean, months and months went on. And our sales department was telling him, "Hey, we can sell this thing, and this is what's happening in the custom side of it." And he finally, this was months into it, he finally said, "Well, we'll try it, but I tell you, we're not going to sell any of those things."
He gave you that little nudge there.
Right. And of course, we did. That was our, I think we called it the Fiber Mark, and it was very successful, and it was our first step into synthetics, and of course.
Now 90% of our sales today or
Yeah,
whatever
right,
it doesn't have wood stock on it.
Don't have wood stock.
Where did the Fiber Mark fall in the lineup? Was it less expensive than the wood guns
No,
at the
because
time,
actually,
or more?
well, it was a little bit less, but fiberglass is not cheap, and but neither was our Deluxe Mark V at that time either. So it seemed to us that it would be difficult to in those days to price that more than a wood gun, so it was less.
Okay,
but we probably made less margin on it too.
Right.
In order to do that.
That's interesting. What about a favorite hunting adventure with Roy?
Well,
I read something about a trip to Africa.
Yeah, I did. I went when I was just when I graduated from high school. Went to Kenya, and he and a friend of my father's and that guy's son went to Kenya on a safari. The regular out in the tent and going out and hunting for plains game, but also we were hunting for lion and elephant back in those days, and it was pretty exciting for a teenager to be over there and have that kind of experience.
Sure. Yeah, that's a crazy experience. You think about that nowadays, and it's just kind of like, yeah, that's impressive as a teenager to be able to go there and do that.
It's funny to even think about traveling without a cell phone today. I mean, think about going on over there. And so what did a hunt like that look like with Roy? Did he have like camera guys going with you guys? I mean, I know today we didn't, but my dad was really into photography and especially into taping on 16 millimeter film. He had a very nice 16 millimeter camera, and so he was over there taking all sorts of videos.
We have all that film now. I think you guys have seen it. I know you have, Kevin, but it'll be, we have it on DVD, but it's the film without the audio, and he'll shoot an animal and go run up to it and stand behind it. And,
most of that was done, before that hunt. Most
that was
of
more of the 50s.
That was, he did a African hunt in 48 and then 51, I believe, and he was just over there testing different calibers. But he filmed everything, and he'd come back and edit it. He did his own editing, with film in a dark room.
Which you think about way ahead of your time.
Yeah, I mean,
filming hunts.
Yeah,
right.
At that point.
And then it was the whole proving grounds. I mean, for his rounds. I mean, that was the whole thing, because that's the whole kind of premise of him starting the business was killing power, right? And was actually knockdown power and having that. And so, the abundance of plains game in Africa in the 50s was, plentiful. So he could go over.
He would go over and shoot different animals, and so a lot of times with calibers, you wouldn't think you would shoot an animal like that, and then, of course, they would drop dead instantly.
And so his
here's a
philosophy
new caliber
of that high velocity killing power kind of came to life by being over there. So,
yeah, I guess it was a great place to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Game rich and also big animals. so they
Yes.
could prove those things. Yeah, makes sense. What about your favorite rifle?
Rifle or caliber?
Those are tough questions. Save the caliber for later. What about rifle for right
Well,
now?
that's changed over the years.
Yeah, that's why I thought
It used to be a Mark V Deluxe.
Because that's all you had growing up.
And now my favorite are some of the prototypes I saw downstairs.
Don't talk about those
easy,
yet.
easy
You
now.
can't
that
talk
that I
about
can't
those.
tell you about.
But that's a great teaser.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go shopping already, just looking at all the new
Some cool stuff.
coming up.
We'll get you a good deal.
It's very cool. So, I've really enjoyed synthetics. I don't like carrying a heavy gun. I like the accuracy that synthetics have, and they don't get messed up. And
Sure.
so I've been hunting, almost since the fiber mark back in the 80s, I've been hunting with synthetic guns.
Yeah. Yeah, and also when you talk about just all those guns and where we're at now, and just to kind of start on a baseline, since it's being episode 1, this is a question to kind of both of you. Obviously, Adam, the most recent president of Weatherby. But when we think about a year in which you became president of Weatherby, Ed, what was that? What year was that?
Gosh, it was
83?
yeah, it was mid-80s,
Mid-80s.
84, 85, somewhere in that
Okay.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And and then my dad retired in 1986, and so it was kind of from 86 on that I was really in charge running the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then most recently, obviously.
Yeah, and so
Adam
I did
and-
that for 40 plus years,
Yeah.
and felt it was someone else's turn.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think when you think, obviously you've been no doubt on the whole thing with the Wyoming move, but a lot of people haven't been able to hear your perspective. Everybody hears Adam's perspective on that.
And they're
but-
tired of it.
And they're tired of listening to Adam. I'm just kidding. What's your thoughts on, what were your thoughts on the initial when you guys were looking around at different places, and just kind of walk us through that?
One thing that's really interesting is years ago, like 20 plus years ago, when we were looking at that time to relocate out of California, we looked all over the West, and I knew that that's really where we needed to be located as a company and our culture, and I didn't want to live anywhere but the West, because that's where I was growing up, and I love the Rockies. And so we made trips and looked all over, and it's funny because we zeroed in on Wyoming. We met with the economic development people, and in Wyoming, we zeroed in on Sheridan. And that's no lie.
Over 20 years ago.
We looked at properties ranches to buy, and in fact, my daughter was just telling me today that she remembers going around looking at those ranches back 20 years ago.
We found the newspaper article. Somebody here sent me, it was early 90s, 92-ish, 93, and found an article about us looking here during that time period. And so, and what's crazy is we started over probably, I think, fall of 14 is when we really started getting back into this relocation thing
Serious
again.
conversation.
But we'd get into it, and then it's like, well, we got the business to run, and then we'd kind of, you got the day-to-day operations. You still got to get product out, and, you got your people and all that stuff. So we'd come back. But fall of 14 is when we started doing that. And I remember we were in your RV with Mom and me and Brenda, and went and scouted out some locations, and we're in a handful of western states, and did a trip then. And so it kind of started then, and then we'd bounce back and forth, I think, to, again, kind of like, okay, it's going to take a lot of time and money and resources. It's going to be hard, but it was, the writing was on the wall that, this move was going to be best for our business. So but then ended up, with Wyoming, and then traveling around, and somehow what's cool is totally separate from really where my parents fell in love with Sheridan 25 plus years ago. Brenda and I, a couple years ago now, was actually in May, and we were going around with the economic development team and checking out different places and different cities. And as soon as we came to Sheridan, just fell in love with it, just from a both personal and then, from a business standpoint, just all the things that we've talked about over and over again that are great about this place. So
So at 20 some odd years ago, you were thinking about moving the company. Was it the same reasons that we finally ended up moving the company? Was the political pressure? I mean, it's obviously escalated in the last decade substantially.
It was there, but nothing like it is today. But that was one of the motivating factors, and just the cost of doing business, of any business in California. And then I personally wanted to move out of California and move to somewhere like Wyoming. And as it turned out, we didn't make that decision at that time, and we stayed put. And I think, I think it was around that time then that we did move the company, because we were in Southern California and then moved up to the Central Coast of California.
So that's when you went from you were in Southgate and you're thinking, okay, we got to move somewhere, because LA had done this expanse into your current area,
Right.
and that neighborhood wasn't quite the same as it once was.
No, not at all.
And where we came from, Central Coast of California, is a great place to be.
Yeah,
It's just
it is
everything
really
else
nice.
about California is difficult for us, But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's pretty cool. I mean, to think of the time frame starting back there, and our whole evolution from back in LA and those things up to Central Coast, and then like I said, I think fall of 14 when we started really looking and looking at a number of states. But then when we it would have been fall of 16. So when I initially got in touch with Wyoming and Governor Meade, and then what it was SHOT Show 17, we sat down with Governor Meade, and kind of what's crazy. So that would have been 2.5 years ago,
Also,
and we're
SHOT
here in the
Show
building.
17 is when you sat down with Meade.
Yes,
For the first
And
time.
And then SHOT
Talking
Show
about-
18.
we announced with Governor Meade.
I remember that.
Right.
And then
Okay.
19, we were there with a whole new team.
Whole new team, and like
and we're here
2
so-
months away from moving into the building.
Right.
So it happened very quick.
Very fast.
Once we decided Wyoming was it's kind of like we either need to, it's just detracting us from what we're doing. We either need to go all out with this thing or not.
Yeah, if you
So-
really think about it, I remember we were in the office. This was a couple weeks ago, right before we moved into this. Somebody said something like, because a bunch of us moved here in June, July of last year, and this was barely broken ground, like where we're sitting right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And like to think about the push those people did just in general to build this building, and within a year.
Well, we had our groundbreaking here. So we're recording this podcast in May 19. So April 5th of 18, we had with the
13 months
governor and everybody right on this property. It was more of an ice breaking ceremony than ground.
No
But
ground.
It was below the ice here in Wyoming, but we did that groundbreaking on this property. Then in April 5th this year, we were in the building on April 5th. Had just moved in here as an office, right? So we just kind of got everybody under one roof again. And that day on April 5th, I got a text of the last truck, semi-truck, leaving Paso Robles with our stuff in it.
Wow. That's
crazy.
And so it 12 months to the date from groundbreaking. We were here. We had new people hired. People moved. Had our last truck
yeah,
here. So.
and even when we were here for the orientation, because a lot of people don't know, but we had multiple buildings in Sheridan during the transition. So we had
Temporary space.
multiple temporary spaces where we had some office people, we had some storage, we had some things like that. Well, you had an orientation day here for everybody.
Yeah.
And like when we were doing that orientation, I remember like you looked out the truck window, and there's a picture of you standing in that window, because we were just like, hey, take a picture of that. And you were like, hey, it's one of the first trucks.
First truck's coming in.
Literally the
that
first
was,
truck.
That was,
It was
early
March 15th.
March.
It was like March 8th or something like that. But
It was March 1st.
So
Yeah, that
Oh, it was
that was
March-
the,
on
that was
March
March
1st.
1st. That was
Yeah.
the day we moved
Yeah,
in.
yeah. And then-
the state of Wyoming and the city of Sheridan and the county, they just couldn't have been better working with them.
For sure.
Yeah.
For people listening, it may be a little confusing because we got our dates a little funny there. So we actually moved into this building twice, right? So there's two sections of the building. We got the office portion, which we moved in April, but then we have the production and warehouse facility, which
March
we moved
1st.
in March 1st.
Yes.
So there's two separate CO, certificate of occupancies, that happen to get in here. So just to be clear.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Good thing. I think we made 2 social media posts about
Moving in.
in, and Adam was like, Kevin, we didn't move in twice. I was like, yeah, my bad. My fault. But Adam, same kind of questions that we asked Ed. When you started working at Weatherby, give us a couple. How old were you when you were like first kind of around the office?
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know this, I had kind of 2 stints at Weatherby. One was kind of during my college. Well, college lasted a long time. So, yeah, during that time. And so, kind of then and initially, and I got, Brenda and I got married young, and so started working at the business in our Tascadero, California location there in the 90s. And so I came in, and within about 3.5 to 4 years, kind of did tech support, warranty and service, marketing, some sales. And so kind of just, the idea was, I remember my dad put me in an office with Dean Rumbaugh.
Shout out.
Who eventually hopefully will be a podcast guest.
Absolutely will be
And
one.
so
give the lowdown on Dean. real quick.
Well, Dean Rumbaugh came when he was 18 years old. My grandfather gave him a job. And Dean just retired here a couple months ago when we moved after working here for 57 years straight as an employee.
Yeah, an encyclopedia.
Unbelievable.
He was like my first boss, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
Yeah,
So-
that's a super
So
weird
Dean actually worked with my dad, Roy, my grandpa, my dad, myself, and then my kids unofficially, just kind of the kids around the shop type of thing. So 4 generations.
I didn't think about it till now, but was Dean including Roy the longest Weatherby employee?
Yeah, I mean, he
longer.
worked there longer than me.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
And
and think about this. Wait.
45.
So if Grandpa died in 88, what's 45 to 88? That's 40. Wait
You know
a minute.
what? Dean worked at Weatherby longer than my dad.
than Roy Weatherby.
Yeah, I just realized that just then. That's pretty.
Think about it. 1945 to 1988.
Yeah,
We just found out history right here on the
43
podcast.
years.
Episode 1.
Wow.
that is pretty cool.
So wow, yeah. And I don't think anybody will ever beat it.
Yeah.
I sure hope I don't.
I didn't.
Well, thanks for the faith.
Yeah.
Thanks for the faith, Al.
I'm saying we're going to be doing so well, and,
Yeah,
anyways. But I was going somewhere with that. Oh, so when I started, I shared an office with Dean, and I remember my dad put me in there intentionally and just said, learn from this guy, because you'll learn all things Weatherby. I mean, he knew suppliers, he knew customers, and of course he knew our product and our product history. So spent those early years really kind of hanging out with Dean a lot, doing a lot of different things. So, yeah.
What about? I know that Roy passed away in 1988, but what about you in memory of Roy?
Yeah, so he'd have been, I guess I'm aging myself, but so I'd have been about 12. And he didn't have phenomenal health, during the end of his life. So I never hunted with him and those sorts of things. So it was, it was definitely that, my grandpa with the gun company, a lot of animals on the wall, and, went to the Weatherby Big Game Trophy Award as a kid growing up, and remember a lot of those real early years and those different things. So it was an identity thing, and really with him and my grandma, it was, remember going out and doing other hobbies. He had a lot of hobbies. I mean, photography was one, but he also did remote control stuff and planes and remember, we had these trucks and different things. So as a kid, remembered more that stuff than hunting or shooting with him. Especially, I was really young, a little too young most that time to hunt and shoot with him, and he was actually he wasn't healthy near the end of his life, so he wasn't getting out doing a lot either. But he was more just the typical kind of grandpa and grandmas, and hanging out with them on holidays
That's cool
and
to
all
think
those different
about,
things.
Giving you too many cookies.
Probably been grandma, not grandpa.
Adam, this is a tough question for you, but let's hear favorite rifle, which it's going to be the same answer that Ed said. That there's some stuff
Maybe the
down
one
in
I'm
the
taking on a
basement
bear
that-
hunt week after next.
Yeah, it might be the new rifle coming on.
It
But
probably
what about,
is.
What about one of
Yeah.
your favorites? That has been around.
I like lighter weight kind of across the
Synthetics.
across the line, and so typically thinner fluted barrel stuff and all that
Cerakoted stuff.
Yeah, and I like all weather stuff, so kind of all those things typically tend to be the rifles for my go-to.
I've got a question for Ed. Well, it's kind of a little short story, but we moved out of California. Trucks and trucks of stuff came. There's a lot of historical things that came through, and we've been going through some of these older firearms that have come through in the warehouse, and we found a box in the warehouse. It's a rifle box, and it's got a yellow Post-it note on it, handwritten George Bush gun. And we open it up, and we're like, it's a beautiful Mark V Deluxe, and it has a custom serial number, GHWB001.
Right.
You gotta tell us about that rifle.
Well, actually, we made 2 different guns
Okay.
for George H.W. Bush.
Shout out.
First was a Athena shotgun, beautiful custom gun. I think it was one of the finest custom guns we've ever built, and I had the opportunity to present that to him at the Oval Office in I want to say it was 1980-ish.
No, not 80-ish, closer to 90. 80,
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm getting my decades
late
mixed
80s.
up. Yes,
Right when he was
Yes.
when he was on his way out. I
Yes.
think it was 87,
Right,
88, somewhere in
right.
there.
You're right. And so that was a really cool opportunity, beautiful gun. And then some years later, we
It would have been 87. Reagan was in.
Yeah.
Sorry, he got in 88. 89, 90, right there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think
Didn't
it
want
was-
somebody to go back later and
I think it was about
check
1990.
You guys are bad at
You're right.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, we are. We had the Mark V in the early to mid 90s, we moved the manufacturing the Mark V to a company in Saco, Maine, who manufactured most of the rifle for us at that time. And so that was very close to Kennebunkport. And through that opportunity of meeting the president back in the 90s, we kind of kept in touch. And so...
Because Kennebunkport, Maine, he has a place there. George H.
Yeah.
Bush.
And so I was talking to him and saying that, we're maybe not very many miles away, and I get back there a lot. And he said, well, let me know sometime when you come back there. So anyway, we built a custom gun for him. I went to his home there at Walker's Point in Kennebunkport and presented this rifle to him, the Mark V rifle. And it had that serial number, GHWB. And I think the one that we have here it was a prototype that we built. And I think there was something that wasn't just right with it, and I don't recall what it was, but we built another one, and that one is the one we actually gave to him.
And I know that.
So it wouldn't have been the same serial number, just so we know we're ATF compliant here.
Yeah.
We'd have had to destroy that otherwise.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there was also a case, and correct me if I'm wrong, of potentially shotguns, right?
What do you mean?
Well, he did the Athena shotgun in the
yeah,
Oval
Athena
Office.
shotgun.
Same
thing.
Yeah.
And then he gave
Did you guys
he gave a
shoot?
shotgun
Did
to
you guys shoot
George
together?
W. Bush.
Pardon?
Did you guys get to shoot together?
We didn't, but I also had just an amazing opportunity to go to Crawford, Texas, and present a shotgun to George W. Bush.
Shout out.
Oh, wow. And we did shoot together.
Oh, okay.
He drove us around his ranch, and we threw a few clays. And
so you're shooting a shotgun with the. Was he sitting president at that time?
Yeah.
No, it was after.
But even after, they've got Secret Service
Yes.
around.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're holding a gun with the president with Secret Service there.
Right.
What did that feel like?
Well, probably not very many people have that opportunity to be
kidding.
standing there with them.
Not that you would be any kind of threat.
You would shorten your angle of. I would just imagine if it was me, you would not be swinging too far over.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Someone said that I probably had a red dot on the back of my head, and I didn't know it.
The whole time. the whole time.
Right. But it was an amazing opportunity and just very gracious. And had lunch with he and Mrs. Bush, and it was a cool time.
That's great.
When we talk about just all this history with the company, and this is a question to kind of both of you, is what about, I'd like to have both, toughest moment, greatest accomplishment. Those are some interesting topics. Adam, you can answer
I
these.
thought we were going to weed out the hard ones, Kevin.
No, we're going straight for it.
It's real.
Greatest accomplishment was probably getting my dad to let me make them a fiber mark.
Still the first.
Sounds like that was a big uphill battle.
I'd say for me so far it's a little easy and I could cheat. I would say probably toughest and greatest was this move. I mean, to lose 80% of your workforce and to move manufacturing business 1,000 miles away and do this has been very it's been very, very challenging, but at the same time very, very rewarding. It's I've had a shorter stint. It's easier for me to think back because it's like I think it's still going on. Yeah. Actually, our grand opening still hasn't even happened. So
June 13th.
The pain is not gone.
And within that same statement, Adam, we got to talk, a little bit about, a lot of the employees here are new, and when you talk about that transition and toughest moments, you guys lost a lot of workforce. And you talk about Dean Rumbaugh, who's been here 57 years. There were a lot of other employees that were there for quite over decades. Decades plus.
Yeah.
Some are still here.
Yeah, we still have other ones that have moved here, but I know that there's a few more that were back there. And talk about a family, one that we're developing here that have some from California, but a lot of new people. And then you think about all the people that were in California that were considered family to you guys, especially for running this business.
As I was thinking about your previous question, that's really what it comes back to for me is the most difficult times, the most challenging, the hardest times are times when business would be down for one reason or another, and you would get to the point where we just have to cut expenses and we'd have to lay people off. And it's people that were good people and people that had been there for quite a while. And so that's probably the most difficult thing I had to deal with in the years is just letting people go, not because they were doing a bad job, but because
out of necessity.
We were doing a bad job and we just had to make it happen.
That's a good answer.
But people are kind of along the same way too. That I think some of the I mean, this business has been built around people and still is, and a team of people. And I think, at the same time, some of the greatest moments come from seeing people rise up and, help deliver a great product or build a great product or whatever it may be, So people are a big asset.
Yeah, well, as we do episode 1 here, we're going to have segments along all these podcasts. And new segments will pop up every podcast. You never know what's going to come up.
Yeah.
But
keep it interesting.
For this specific one, we'll have one that we try to do with everyone that's a guest. And this is an ironic statement because all of us are somewhat guests because it's episode 1. But, Ed, you're going to be our guest in the segment we call
The Weatherby Top 10.
This will be top 10 questions we're going to ask you.
By the second podcast, this segment will probably be gone.
No.
Either that or you'll be gone.
Yeah, one or two.
Speaking of those difficult moments.
Ed's got jokes.
He's a funny guy.
All right, here we go. Where were you born?
Los Angeles, California.
How many states have you lived in?
2.
Most uncommon item you carry every day?
Whoa.
It's a tough one. But it could be a common item. It's just the most uncommon for you.
Does anybody answer that question?
You're the first
You're the first one that's ever got one.
You're breaking this in.
I have no idea.
Okay, we'll pass.
Nope.
Okay.
Favorite state to hunt?
Wyoming, of course.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Historical person you could take on an adventure or a hunt, one of the two.
Historical person I'd like to take on.
Yeah, if you could go back in time, grab them, take them on an adventure.
Oh, wow. Ernest Hemingway.
Oh.
Oh, man, that's good.
Name a hobby you have outside of the outdoor space.
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of those.
Give us as many as you'd like.
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Fishing, skiing, mountain biking,
Okay.
biking.
Yep. And you like biking too. Not mountain biking, but you like road biking.
I like all the biking.
Yeah,
We
lots of
we
biking.
do them both.
Yeah.
Favorite rifle cartridge?
270 Weatherby.
Okay. What is
He
your
one-upped. His dad's was
Yeah,
257.
yeah,
so
that's,
you
gotta
that's
go
what
up.
I'm thinking. Like Roy's favorite was 257, so
Yeah.
he's like, I'm going to go a little
a good
bit
one.
bigger.
You must be 7mm then.
what is your must-have hunting item when you go on a hunt?
My Weatherby rifle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Some
What-
of these are going to be loaded, and other guests may not have
Other
the
guests
same
might not have the
answer.
same. What is or was your dream hunt? Meaning it could have happened already, or it is something you'd like to happen in the future.
Well, let me give you 2.
Great.
Okay. One of my dream hunts was taking my daughter on an elk hunt in Colorado, and we did do it, and it was a promise I made to her and finally followed through, and we had a great time. And the dream hunt would be taking all my kids on a hunt somewhere.
What year was the Colorado elk hunt?
That was, 4 or 5 years ago?
15.
6?
2015?
And what
Fairly
cal-
recently.
Ish, yeah.
What cartridge did she use?
300, I believe. 7mm.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a 7.
Yeah, I used a 300.
All right.
So, yeah, truth be told for this, just to get the awkwardness out here. So, my sister's in the podcast room because she's
looking
here
back for
traveling
answers.
with Dad. And so she wanted to be a part of the first one.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And
Hi.
He's all looking back there. 300? 7mm.
the last question is just a pro tip for any new hunter.
Pro tip for any new hunter. Buy a Weatherby
No. Great answers. Great answers.
If every hunter would do that,
and carry the best knife you can.
Best knife you can. That's
yeah,
great.
that's a good tip.
It's a good one.
Make sure it's sharp. Last thing you want to do is gut with a dull knife. Big
Been
mistake.
there, done
Or
that.
cut yourself with a sharp knife. That's
Right.
bad, too.
Yeah, that is bad. My dad cut his wrist on a Wyoming trip
Wow.
2 years ago. It was a real mess. Yeah, he was on blood thinners too. So it was
nice.
a
Oh, wow.
disaster.
Not
Yeah,
good.
you'll have to do an immediate exit, right?
Yeah, we shot a mule deer. Actually, me and him. It was one of his dream hunts. Actually, to bring it up, it was one of his dream hunts, and I scheduled the whole thing. We went out on BLM, hiked 7 miles back there on day 2.
Wow.
We're walking up a ridge, kind of sand hilly ridge, and a mule deer jumps up. Pretty kind of a smaller deer, but I was like, "Hey, you want to shoot this deer?" And he's like, "Yep." That's my dad. Shoots everything. And He brings up his rifle. He shoots the deer. It drops. A deer right behind it jumps up, which is way bigger. And I'm like, give me that rifle. I had a tag 2, and I shot that buck. So we shot 2 bucks right at the same time. We go down to start cleaning his deer, and we went to take the head off of the spine, and that knife just slid right off the back of the skull and got him right across the wrist.
Oh my gosh.
And my dad's pretty tough dude. He stands up, he goes, "We got to go." And I was like, that's like a really hard statement to say right now. Like, we're 7.5 miles from the truck. It's 5:30
With a couple nice
p.m.
bucks.
A couple nice bucks on the ground. He's like, "No, we have to leave." He's like, "I've cut myself real bad." And he just showed it to his blood everywhere. I was like, we might have to call a helicopter. But long story short, we cleaned his buck, we cleaned my buck, and we got him, in bags. And we just left everything back there. And we just started walking to the truck. And we got to the truck at 11:30 p.m. And then got in the truck, drove to Casper, which was an hour and a half drive. And we got to the ER at like 1:45 a.m.
And you went back the next day?
We went back the next day, killed 2 antelope.
And got your deer?
Yeah, got my deer. Yeah, went in, got our camp, got our deer, packed everything
Well, it acted
out.
like you just left your deer there,
No, we
Kevin.
didn't leave deer. Come on.
Nope.
Come on. We're ethical people. No. We got in that same day we shot 2 antelope and then called it a day. But it's
cool.
It was a good trip.
But Wyoming doesn't have good hunting, so.
No, don't come here. No. Actually, we get to be residents this year, which is a big deal for us.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, after a year.
12 months.
Long months.
12 long months.
Yes.
I'm grateful for it, and I'm also not grateful for it because it's harder for other people to become residents. Now that we're residents, we're like, great.
Game on.
But I tell you
Game
what,
on.
No more.
buying a fishing license 11 months after you've moved here as a non-resident is not a fun thing.
Yeah, I just got a non-res turkey tag and lived here for 11 months.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
So, anyways, no, we appreciate you guys. Episode 1, sitting down with us and talking with us, and there's a lot of information to talk about, and hopefully we hit some points with Ed being here. We really appreciate you coming here, and it really is an honor for me always to kind of be here, but it's even cooler to be sitting at a table with you both, second and third gen,
Very
running
cool.
the company.
Yeah.
Really proud to be working here. I know everybody here is. Everybody in this office is super excited to be here, and it's cool to see where everybody's come from. There's a lot of Arkansas. I mean, not a lot. There's a couple Arkansas guys.
Which there's 2.
I meant to say
And
something
they're right
else.
here.
I meant to say
Hey,
something
okay.
else.
Okay.
Arkansas, but you go around the office and you ask people where they're from, and if you really thought about it, just across many states, and you think about just why everybody got here, and it's because of this.
Okay, so let me put myself in host mode to end it here then.
Oh, do it.
'Cause were you landing the plane there?
Oh,
Were
yeah, I
you
was
getting
trying
in?
to figure it out.
Okay.
But
Episode 1.
There's no time limit.
Crosswind
episode
came up,
1.
got to do a go around.
We're good, yeah.
So they could hear from a couple folks that started with us in the last year. I think, Luke, you just passed your year anniversary
I did,
with us. And
yeah.
Kevin, you're right in there.
Yeah, I'm at a year.
So you asked us a bunch of hard questions. What's been your most challenging day here? Things that you can say on a podcast with us here.
Yeah.
So in other words, if it was mad at me, like you'd want to bypass that.
I've
one.
never been mad at you.
Thanks, Kevin. And then 2, what's been your best day, your best moment?
Oh, man, really good questions.
Yeah, now I see.
well,
how
it's
you
the
guys
same
felt.
questions
I
that
know.
you guys
I
asked.
realize
Sure.
now.
Man, why? That's so hard.
So maybe you
Just
should
let me
change
back
it in the future. You shouldn't
Yeah.
ask hard
No,
questions.
they're good questions.
I'll go. I don't
Yeah.
mind. So I think starting with the most challenging day, the market's down right now, and I don't think that's a secret for anybody. Everybody's earnings reports have been coming out in the last week or so, and it's a tough market. So being responsible for sales, marketing, and product development, I feel like I can't develop stuff fast enough. I feel like we can't sell enough sometimes, and feel like we can't do a good enough job marketing just because the overall market's down. So the last couple months have been hard for that reason. Conversely, probably the best time, we had a pretty good SHOT Show. Like coming out of SHOT Show this year, we had some big wins that'll be apparent more later on this year. But we had some really cool wins and some business that happened just really fast at SHOT Show that I don't think would have happened if we didn't have some of the relationships that we had on the team. And that was really fun. That was really fun.
Those are good answers.
What about you, Kevin? He's
Hardest-
going to get more emotional about it.
I'm not.
Watch this. Yeah.
No. Hey, listen, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I cry about stuff. You know that.
That's
Luke.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not gonna cry about this on the podcast. All right.
You don't? Are you sure?
I'm positive. Okay. I'm positive. I'm gonna give like a really basic hard day answer. Yeah. I would say I'd say my hardest days were I think just in the beginning when we first moved here as a temporary team, just trying to communicate with the team that was still in California, and then working in those two different places. And honestly, it was just kind of difficult. We go back to the discussion of new employees here and then employees that had been there for a long time and knew that their eventual move to Wyoming. It was just kind of hard, It was just a tough time. And I can't imagine how you guys felt in that time. But I feel like that was a little difficult. And then, in the same time, it was just a really slim team at that point. And we're still a really slim team, but we do really well at what we're doing. And I think that for a while there, it was like, man, I don't know how we're going to get it, There's a lot of stuff to be done. There still is a lot of stuff to be done. More things to be done. But
every day.
But I think that was my hardest time. What was the other question?
Best
times. I don't know, man. I have a great time here. I have a good time. Cool. I really enjoy hunting with Adam. I mean, we've shared a couple good hunts together, and it's always fun to get in the backcountry. Yeah. We've shared some good hunts together. We went to South Dakota, had a crazy whitetail hunt.
We'll have to tell that story on a future one.
We'll tell that one. That's a wild story. I've been hunting whitetails my whole life. First time and last time that'll ever happen.
Yeah.
But I think we had a good time. I think it was fun. Adam and Brenda got to hunt elk in Unit 37, which is 40 minutes from where we're sitting right now. 14 miles as a bird flies because I had it on my GPS. And it was really fun to be a part of that. And that was something that is genuine.
Actually, you shed some tears in that story. if I can.
You
maybe.
mean in that not
in
now.
The story.
For everyone listening, I'm not shedding tears.
Not now, but remember he had to hike out. His wife was in an event and a play. She's an actress, phenomenal actress. And so he packed out and we hunted hard.
Day 5.
Yeah, we'd hunted hard for day after day after day, and he was there to kind of chronicle our first hunt back there. And then I had the Garmin InReach and phone service, and that night said, got the big one down.
I thought he was kidding with me.
Yeah,
I was super
the night that he left, and he was just so happy and sad and everything all at once. He said, "I looked at that InReach and I shed a tear."
Yeah, and I went to Steph's show, so like I wasn't looking at my phone, and it was like I had to be I had to be husband for Steph, so I wasn't gonna be like texting people, so I like put it on my do not disturb. Yeah. And when we both got home, like an hour later after the show, I turned it on and she was standing in front of me. I was like it just hit me so hard. And I was like, I shed tears, and she's like, "What's going on? Did your dad die?" And I was like, "Adam killed a bull." I was like, "Oh God." I was like, but a little bit more culmination. We went to Alaska. So like I think it was more the build up. We went to Alaska, hunted for 7 days in some crazy conditions. Didn't kill anything. We were doing it all for a purpose at the point. And then, hunting back there, it was tough. But we made good on it.
We
did
cool.
Yeah. We went back there and packed them out.
Another one of my good moments was back in October. We did the antelope hunt with the Hush guys.
Yeah.
And
Shout out.
it was Adam, you and Dana was the hunter, and Casey and
Ryan
and his daughter.
From Media was there.
And so I wanted to kind of be the last person to shoot, but then there was some pressure mounting. Dana made a great shot. She had a great experience. She carried the antelope out on her back by herself with 10 dudes just like watching her, and that was great. But then when it came time, when the shot presented itself, I could feel Kevin being nervous for me being nervous.
I was filming, but I was also there very nervous.
Kevin's filming, and Adam is my boss, and he's Adam Weatherby. I've got a Weatherby rifle, and I'm holding on an antelope, and it's crazy windy, and I'm like,
really
don't
windy.
be an airball. It was not.
It was a great shot.
It was a great shot, but that was.
I was extremely.
That was a little
happy.
nerve-wracking, but it was really
I
exciting.
felt like I shot that animal.
That was a really cool. That was a cool. It was a really cool moment for me. Yeah, it was really
when
neat.
you hit it.
Don't take his moment. That was his moment.
It was really neat, but it was kind of a combo deal because I could actually feel. I was nervous a little bit.
I was right. You could have been giving me a piggyback ride. I was that close to you on your shoulder.
Yeah, we were pretty tight because the way it all worked out. We were pretty close.
And that antelope hit the ground so hard.
It did.
Its butt hit the ground before its
Is that
chest did.
257?
257.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
What was it? 330 yards?
Yeah, right around 300. Yeah.
Which we side them in at that because it's a Weatherby.
Right. It's a Weatherby.
Yeah. Side them in at 300. You're fine.
That was cool. Cool
yeah,
day.
that was a good day.
Real cool day.
But anyways, hey, good questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for throwing them back on us.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, tough ones. I'll have to alter my top 10 questions now. But hopefully everybody enjoyed episode 1 of On Our Mark, the Weatherby podcast. And there'll be many more to come, many more guests. And we are excited to be here in Sheridan, Wyoming. Thanks to Ed and Adam for being here and being a part of episode 1. See you guys later.
Cool.